What happens when the family that cast you out shows up at your door, only to realize they've been living under your shadow all along? You're not welcome in this house. My father bellowed, slamming his fist against the table. You gave birth behind our backs. You filthy little liar. The room froze. Then I heard it. My sister Belle gasped dramatically, my older brother Chase started laughing, and my youngest brother Ethan clapped, as if it were some sort of twisted reality show. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Before we begin, drop a comment below, and tell us where you're from and which city you're watching this video from. And after watching the whole story, don't forget to share what you would have done in this situation. Be honest, we read every comment. Let's dive in. I was standing barefoot in the living room, holding a sleeping baby boy in my arms. My back pressed against the very door I once hung birthday banners on. I didn't do anything wrong, I finally whispered. He's my son. Dad's voice cracked. And who the hell is his father? Some dropout? A lowlife? I blinked away tears. He passed away in a car accident 2 weeks before my due date. My mother, silent until now, closed her eyes like she didn't want to hear another word. That cut deeper than anything else. I was 20 years old. I had survived an entire pregnancy without support, worked night shifts, lied about college just to keep my dignity intact. After giving birth, I stayed in a shelter for women for a week. I didn't come home to beg. I came because my baby had a high fever and I didn't know what else to do. But instead of warmth or compassion, all I got was rage. Get out, Dad growled, stepping forward. Take your mistake and walk out of my house. You're not my daughter anymore. I swallowed hard but didn't argue. My hands tightened around my baby. His tiny breath warmed my collarbone. As I turned to leave, Belle smirked. Chase opened the door for me with mock courtesy, and Ethan muttered something under his breath. The wind hit my face as I stepped into the dark. The snow was already falling. I didn't have a coat, just a thin hoodie, and my arms were numb. My baby whimpered as I wrapped myself tighter around him. No suitcase, no money, no apologies. I disappeared into the night. They never came looking. 13 years later, the black iron gates of my estate slowly rolled open. 3 luxury SUVs were parked outside. Standing in front of them, shivering, confused, and overdressed, were Belle, Chase, and Ethan. They hadn't seen me yet, but they were staring straight at my mansion. It wasn't just a house. It was the kind of place people stop to take photos in front of. Tall white stone walls, arched windows, trimmed hedges lining the driveway, imported pine trees swaying gently. It screamed wealth and power. They exchanged uneasy glances. Their father, my father, wasn't with them. He'd passed away 2 months earlier from a stroke. With him gone, they assumed they were the next heirs to his estate. The big mansion he always bragged about, the one they thought he quietly moved into during his final years. But what they didn't know was that the mansion never belonged to him. A teenage boy stepped out from the front door. Tall and athletic, dressed in a sharp black shirt and slacks, his piercing hazel eyes froze them in place. He looked exactly like his father. He was 13 and he was mine. They didn't know it yet, but they were staring at the very past they tried to bury. Then I walked out behind him, head held high, wearing black dress pants and a cream blazer. No makeup, but every inch composed.
Belle sleeps par terre.
Ethan stepped back. Chase froze completely. My son turned to me and asked calmly, "Are those the people who threw you into the snow?" I nodded once. He stepped back, crossed his arms, and stood tall beside me like a knight beside his queen. I looked at them and smiled just a little. "Welcome to my home," I said. "Funny seeing you all here." Their faces drained of color, and I hadn't even told them the worst part yet. No one spoke. Not Belle with her designer clutch, not Chase with his slicked back hair, not even Ethan, who always had something to say. They just stood there blinking, trying to process what the hell was happening. I let the silence stretch. It was delicious. I had waited 13 years for this moment, not out of hate, but because I had learned that real power doesn't shout. It whispers. It makes people tremble by doing nothing at all. "You will live here," Belle finally stammered, her voice cracking slightly. She tried to smile through her sweat-drenched silk blouse. You work here? No, I said plainly. I own it. Ethan looked between me and the boy beside me. You're joking. My son tilted his head. Why would she joke about something written on every deed in the county courthouse? Chase squinted at him. Who are you? I placed a hand gently on my son's shoulder. This is Adrian, I said. My son. The silence became heavier, not because they didn't remember him, but because they did. That baby they laughed at was now taller, sharper, smarter, standing in the doorway of the estate they thought would be theirs. Come inside, I said, turning my back on them. I didn't wait. If they wanted to talk, they have to walk through my doors on their own. And they did. They followed me into the grand marble entryway. Their footsteps echoed beneath the 20-foot ceilings. A spiral staircase rose to the second floor, and a chandelier hung above them like a frozen star. On the wall beside it, an enormous painting depicted me in bold classical strokes, one arm resting across a chair, Adrian standing beside me in a private school blazer. It was a symbol, a message, a declaration. Ethan muttered, You've got to be kidding. Chase walked up to it slowly. When did you become this? I turned to face them. The moment you all stopped pretending I was family. We sat in the formal lounge. Adrian stood watching them from the archway like a guardian. He didn't sit. He didn't need to. I poured tea, not for them, but for myself. So, Belle tried fake cheerfulness. What's this about? We got the attorney's message. Something about a final estate clarification. Yes, I said, sipping once. It's about Dad's will. Or rather, the property you assumed he left you. She straightened. He said it was ours. He lied, I said, because it never was his. Chase's eyes narrowed. What the hell are you talking about? I reached over and pulled open a thin folder on the coffee table. Inside were the original deed documents dating back 16 years. The name on them? Mine. Dad never bought this house, I said calmly. He leased it on credit. When the owner defaulted, I bought it out from under him, quietly, legally, permanently 8 years ago. Belle's face dropped. No, he lived here. As a tenant. I corrected. I allowed it under one condition. He never told anyone who the actual owner was. Ethan's jaw clenched. Why would he agree to that? Because he didn't want to admit that the daughter he threw out owned the roof over his head. They were spiraling now. Chase was sweating. Belle looked pale. Ethan kept pacing. I leaned back and spoke with purpose. I didn't want revenge. I didn't hunt for it. I just worked. I built. I cried while my son coughed in the dark. I scrubbed bathroom floors in the morning and sold art online at night. I taught myself finance while Adrian slept in my lap. I didn't have lawyers back then or friends. I only had one thing. Chase muttered. What? I stared at him. Memory. They shifted uncomfortably. Memory of who shut the door on me when I was bleeding, who laughed when I begged, who clapped when I was tossed onto the street. Adrian stepped forward now, his voice calm and crisp. And now we remember you. He slid another file onto the table. Belle opened it, hands trembling. Her lips moved silently as she read the numbers. Her mansion, her summer house, her designer brand investments, all foreclosed, all bought, all quietly acquired by a firm under my name. You took everything? Ethan asked, eyes wide. I stood. No, I earned everything. The fact that it happened to include everything you thought you'd inherit? Coincidence. Belle looked broken. So, what happens now? I paused. You're here because I'm deciding what kind of woman I want to be. Adrian looked up at me. And what are you choosing? I smiled softly. The kind who doesn't forget, but also the kind who won't become like them. They looked confused. I'm giving you one house back, I said. The old one. On the condition that you never speak my name and hate again. Not to each other, not to the world, and not to Adrian ever. Chase looked stunned. Why? Why would you do that? I locked eyes with my son. Because I raised a man I'm proud of, and I won't teach him to hate. Chase finally broke the silence. So what? Now you're just the bigger person? You're throwing charity at us. I looked at him. No, I'm offering closure. What you do with it is your business. Belle shook her head, her voice soft. I can't believe this. All these years, you were building this empire while we thought you disappeared. I met her gaze. I did disappear. You made sure of it. Ethan leaned on the windowsill, still avoiding eye contact. Why didn't you say something? Come back earlier. Adrian turned toward him. Why would she? So you could mock her again? Ethan looked away. I stepped closer, keeping my tone calm. I came back now because Dad's death ended the silence. The truth had to come out, not for revenge, but for justice. Chase muttered. You think you're some saint now? No, I said. But I know who I am, and I'm not the broken girl you threw out. Adrian asked, Can I speak to them alone? I blinked. Are you sure? He nodded. They need to hear this. I stepped out through the slightly cracked door. I heard his voice. You clapped when I was thrown out into the cold. I didn't choose to be born. But I grew up watching her rebuild her life while carrying me on her back. You didn't just hurt her. You tried to erase her. But I'm living proof she couldn't be erased. Silence. Then he walked out of the room, calm as ever. I'm done, he said to me. They know what they need to know. As the sun dipped below the trees, I knew that for the first time in 13 years, we were no longer the ones who had to carry shame. They were. 3 days later, the papers were signed. I didn't go to the lawyer's office. I let them handle it alone. They took the old family house, nothing more. I made sure of that. A single property, no titles, no shares, no inheritance, just a roof over their heads, and a boundary they were never allowed to cross again. I wasn't being cruel. I was setting limits, the kind of limits they never gave me. That evening, Adrian and I sat on the back patio. The sun was sliding down behind the hills. You okay? I asked, handing him a cup of tea, strong, honest tea, the way he liked it. He nodded. I'm just thinking about them. He shrugged a little. I guess I thought it would feel better seeing them like that. And does it? He was quiet for a while. Then he said, they looked so empty. Not angry, not proud, just lost. I nodded, staring out at the gold-tipped horizon. That's what happens when you build your life on lies. Eventually, the floor gives out.
He sipped his tea.
Do you think they'll ever change? I let that sit in the air for a few seconds. I don't know, but I know we did. He looked at me and, for the first time in days, smiled just a little. Yeah, we did. I smiled back. And we don't owe anyone an explanation for it. We sat in silence for a few minutes more. The wind rustled the hedges. Somewhere, a distant car drove by. The world kept moving. Eventually, he leaned back in the chair and said, You know what the crazy part is?
What?
I'm not even mad anymore. That caught me off guard. You're not?
No.
I just feel proud. Like they tried to erase us, but here we are. You gave me everything. They gave me nothing, but I still don't hate them. I felt my throat tighten. He continued, I think that's what makes us different. I reached over and placed my hand on his. They taught me how to survive, I said. But you taught me how to live again. That night, we walked the hallways of the house we'd built together from nothing. Every photo on the wall, every piece of furniture, every light bulb was a reminder that we had been cast out, but we never stayed gone. We returned not with vengeance, but with strength. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. Not to destroy, but to rise. And somewhere far across the city, in a dimly lit kitchen filled with silence and shame, the people who once clapped at my pain were finally, for the first time in their lives, facing the truth alone. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's showing them how much better you've become without them.